Magneto, doesn't matter what X-Men movie it is, Magneto is the main character.
Mm-hmm.
At this point in time, Magneto is the main character, and that's who we're trying to see the most of.
Henrik. Just working at that factory,
Henrik.
he had a daughter, he had a wife, and you were thinking, everything's going right, but then Magneto and his having to save his friends, what
Save
a
somebody's
jerk.
life. What saving lives. What a jerk.
But it really is tragic. They really made him have just this out of nowhere in this fun blockbuster movie. There's just this tragic story of how Magneto tried to do what he fought against all these years, and it's like it works, and he's in love, and he has this daughter, but then like human error comes into play, and
Of course.
like it's just so tragic. I mean, when the arrow was like launched unintentionally, if your heart didn't just sink a little because you knew exactly what was going to happen.
Immediately I knew. I was like, no.
What really caught me, though, is because I knew that the girl died immediately. But what really caught me was when he was holding his wife and she wasn't moving either. And then I thought about it for like a half second and I was like, that arrow went straight through and into his wife.
Went through
Killed
the child
both
into
of them.
the wife's chest. And it was heartbreaking because Michael Fassbender, kudos to him for being the actor he is. I love him in everything I've ever seen him in.
Exactly.
And he just, I can't even imagine like being Magneto in that situation and how he portrayed it. It was just unreal. It was unexpected too. I didn't expect him to just kill his family. I was like, oh, well now he's going to get mad and kill all of you. But
dude, I don't think that's not a canon mutant. His daughter in this movie, that's not a canon. That's just something that they came up with, right?
No, that is not. No, that Polish family he had is not canon by any means.
I've rewatched the movie a number of times, and I spent a little bit more time in this recent watching looking at the little girl because I wanted to see, now that I knew she was a mutant, there was a little bit more of a spotlight put on her.
Yeah.
And you can see earlier in the movie when he's like, hey, call her in for dinner or whatever it was, she's outside feeding deer from her hands, and there are birds and other animals just hanging around her.
She can talk to animals.
She can very clearly communicate with all forms of animals.
And that's awesome. I want that power.
And mutant powers aren't really supposed to manifest that early either. There's no way she was 10. At the youngest, she was 9. And
yeah,
your mutant powers should not be manifesting themselves at 9 years old unless you're a powerful mutant like Magneto or Charles.
Magneto is one of the few level 5 Omega mutants.
Well, he's 3 for 3 now in mutant children.
Yeah, good for him. Good. What genes?
Really though, you got Quicksilver, Scarlet Witch, and a kid who can talk to animals.
You're doing well, bud. You got it down.
Like, your mutant genes make some very interesting other mutants. But really, it was really tragic, and I think it was necessary because there really wasn't any other kind of thing that could happen besides a tragic death that would push Magneto to a point where he would just think Apocalypse was like something he should do. He would not normally, if Apocalypse approached him and was like, I'm gonna kill everybody in this room like it's nothing, Magneto would have been like, oh, either we need to fight or I need to go get Charles so I can fight you with him. That's kind of how Magneto would have approached it once he noticed this guy was more powerful than him. But he was so messed up and
angry. He was already there to kill all those people.
Yeah. He fell.
After the fact.
He fell out of being anti-hero and straight into villain without even really knowing it. And it was hard to see.
He showed up at the factory standing there talking to all the people like, I've known all of you for so long. It was a very real scene. Mm-hmm. It was cool to watch because it just imposed the question of like how human are mutants. Mm-hmm. Like you can just go like I don't know, the relativity between the two people.
Well, it's like what they talk about in the film Chronicle. It's once a human develops these powers, it's hard for you to not look at other humans like a lesser creature because you could so easily get rid of them, like stepping on an ant. And obviously, that's not the way you should look at it. Charles sees that and he understands that. And Magneto's always struggled with that. Like, if I'm this powerful, why am I not,
leading at least.
Exactly. And Charles has tried for so many years to teach him this lesson. And in a really, really tragic way, Magneto learned that lesson, that because you're not that powerful, you can just that easily be taken out of this world. One arrow is all it takes. And I don't know, it's a very intense scene, but it was very necessary as well for the movie and the progression of the plot.
For the progression of Magneto's character, it needed to happen. Otherwise, he would have wanted nothing to do with Apocalypse or the fight. He would have been nowhere near it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, if he hadn't gone through that, I don't think he would have joined Apocalypse. I don't think he would have been on board with the whole mission. But because he had just gone through this tragedy and he saw, really some of the worst things humanity can offer, he was on board. And then, Apocalypse takes him to Auschwitz, the place where his powers were born, in order to give him this power boost, like, feel the earth, you can move it. And, he turns Magneto into an earthbender, which, because if he wasn't powerful enough to begin with. And, they're ready now. Apocalypse is ready. He's formed his group, he has his plan, and at this point, he still doesn't know about Charles or anything about the X-Men, really. So that brings us right there. He's kind of chilling, building some armor for, Storm and his and Psylocke and Angel. He's like, yeah, I'm gonna build some armor in the corner. Magneto just kind of walks off, and Charles tries to communicate with him. That is when Apocalypse learns about the X-Men. They had the element of surprise. They were going to be able to show up and Apocalypse not know anything about them and them not know anything about him as mutants fight. But now they learn basically that he can control Charles through Magneto, and he can control the people Charles can control through Cerebro, through Magneto, through Charles. And that is so insane. I mean, the fact that his powers can go that far. So it's not really a surprise to me that he then easily teleports right into the house, right in the basement, tricks Havoc, but it's all okay because it leads us to yet another Quicksilver scene. Alex, how good was this one?
The one thing that I was hoping for out of this movie was another scene with Quicksilver in it. Because it kind of puts into perspective what Quicksilver can do, like realistically how fast he can actually move, and that's just something cool to have in there. The song itself made me laugh going into this scene, just because with the shot of his shoes, the song starts playing, he's standing there eating a Twinkie.
It was
That's
perfect.
Quicksilver. That's all I ever want is Quicksilver standing there eating a Twinkie.
It was really different because the first scene that we get in Days of Future Past, it's sort of like when he puts on the headphones and you hear "Save Time in a Bottle," you're just kind of like mystified, like, oh my gosh, this guy, like, this is what he can do. Oh my god. But this one, you're ready for it. So they take this fun, more comical vibe to it, and it's like you said, it starts immediately. You see the shoes, you hear the beat, and he's eating a Twinkie, and he just leaves the Twinkie and the card right in the air as he flies into the building. It's so funny. Ugh. It's a great scene.
Good addition. Yes, it is. That's what I was going to say. It's in the midst of the movie, kind of brings you back to a comic feel. Kind of makes people laugh, makes people, but like some real serious going on at the same time. And
yeah.
it was just a good scene to have, and it was smart of them to put another scene like that in the movie.
And it is a very important scene, not only for Quicksilver, but I mean, this is sort of us getting caught up in this whole craze of this explosion, just like everyone else at the school. And that puts us in the mindset Scott's in. Because right when Quicksilver ends, you're like, where's Havoc? Where's Havoc? And Quicksilver got everybody who was alive in that house out. And so it sort of settles in for the viewer as well as Scott that Havoc's dead. Havoc just died. and they just took a huge major blow to the X-Men. I mean, Havoc was one of the few remaining from First Class. And it's sort of a transition into Scott. And then the whole following scene where Jean, Scott, and Nightcrawler, save everybody. It's sort of, this whole moment in the film is sort of a passing of the torch onto this new generation of X-Men.
From First Class to the current class.
Exactly. Now we're here. We're at the heyday 80s of the X-Men. And this is a scene or a particular point in the movie that I was really hoping we would get to see. As I mentioned earlier, I watched the animated series as a kid, so I really, really loved getting to see Jubilee, getting to see Nightcrawler and Scott Summers and Jean Grey actually, going around just being X-Men for a minute and trying to save their friends. And it was sort of calming, as well as it, like you said, it brought me back to, this is a comic book movie, this is a comic book feel, because we kind of went through a very traumatic thing with Magneto for about 20 minutes there, and it sort of pulls you out of the movie. So they did a good job bringing us back, and plus it was a great little way for them to give us more Hugh Jackman.
I always want more Hugh Jackman.
Always.
Doesn't matter what movie I'm watching.
Have you aged ever? Not since 2008.
Touching on what you said with the classic, the 80s X-Men, as I too, I'm a fan of the animated series. My brothers watched it growing up, so I watched it too with them. The uniforms, the outfits. We got to see all the classic uniforms. We got to see, like you said, the classic team. It made everything blend together really well, and it brought what everybody loved about the X-Men together again.
Exactly. Yes, I totally agree with that. I feel like the first two movies were sort of seeing if they could make an X-Men movie based around Professor X, Magneto, and Mystique. And now that they've proven twice that they can, now it's sort of like, can we make an X-Men movie involving around these classic characters again? Because that's something that hasn't been done since, the X1, 2, and Last Stand. So to finally see it again on screen and for it to be done this well, it was really cool. I've been waiting for it, and now we have the new generation. Moving forward, we all know who the characters are going to be in the next one, and who the actors and actresses are who are going to play them. But then that brings us to really where they kind of truly come of age, because the torch has been passed at that point once they free all their friends and they let Weapon X go. It's all very pivotal to the development of them being the X-Men, and for them to take the last step in truly becoming the X-Men, they have to go fight Apocalypse. But due to the whole psychic connection that Apocalypse had with Charles through Magneto, Apocalypse knows they're coming now. He's ready.
Oh, for sure.
He's ready for this. And he knows that if his followers are loyal, he will win this fight. So he's not worried at all. In fact, his plan is to, become Charles. And as he took him earlier in the movie, he's ready. He's sort of allowing this climax to happen because Apocalypse is an egomaniac. And it's his downfall, and it's one of the great points of the movie, because when the X-Men show up and they really truly begin this whole fight, not a lot of plot development obviously happens. They really just, for a movie full of character development and plot, they just fight.
Great action.
It's very refreshing, and it's what we paid to see, and it's awesome.
I think they did a really good job of keeping the screen time, especially during the fight, pretty even amongst everybody. You saw everybody the whole way through. You weren't really like, okay, well, where's this person? What are they doing? No, the whole time you were getting everything. They gave us a lot, honestly.
Yeah, they did. I love that Nightcrawler fought Angel just like he did earlier in the movie, but now Nightcrawler's fighting Angel, who's powered up, and he has a reason to fight him. Before, he didn't even want to fight. Now he has something to believe in, a reason to fight. And so that fight was instantly hooked me. I love Beast. He's one of my favorite X-Men. And so the fact that he took on Psylocke was so cool.
And stood up to her, too.
Mm-hmm.
And
Beast is no slouch. People tend to only see the nerdy little guy, little scientist, but Hank is no slouch.
Hank can fight for sure.
Hank gave himself a power-up, okay? So he's very formidable.
He's a main X-Men. I mean, think about it that way. He's a main X-Men that's always been there with Charles, and he's gonna be there. He's gonna be a difference maker, no matter how you look at it.
Yeah, it's going to be really cool to see the continued development of this little group, especially Jean, because when we looked at this whole final fight, and Charles became finally bald because Apocalypse kind of merged with him for a second, which I think in a way probably made Professor X even stronger.
Oh, I agree. I thought about that before. I mean, tapping into that, that's something Charles never been exposed to before. Something had to have happened.
Yeah.
Rather than just all of his hair fall out.
He has too powerful of a mind not to have picked up a thing or two from Apocalypse during that. And that whole little animation they did when Nightcrawler was popping in and saving everybody, when he jumped in to grab Charles, and we got to see for a second the Nether Realm, we got to see, Nightcrawler and Charles pass right into the ship. It was so cool. I felt like I was thinking the same way as Apocalypse in that moment, because I was so surprised. It came out of nowhere. Next thing I know, it was happening, and Charles was on the ship, and Apocalypse just woke up like, what happened? What happened? I was asleep.
He'd won.
I thought I won. I was about to wake up and literally telepathically have control of every single person on the Earth. I clearly don't have that right now. I need to go get Charles. I need to finish this. And because his mind is so clouded, I think he doesn't really see the danger he's opening himself up to. I mean, he walks right out into the lowest part of the battlefield, right into the kill zone. It basically invites whoever's left to try to fight him because he wants Charles. And he opens himself up to be attacked by everybody. And what impresses me about Apocalypse is that he was still good to win that fight, all the way up until Storm hit him at the very end.
Yeah.
He was about to teleport out of there and be perfectly fine. Psylocke probably would have stayed on his side
if he had just kept up.
But he let his guard down. He got cocky, and next thing he knows, there's metal in him. There's he's getting Scott Summers, getting Cyclops. There's so many things started happening very quickly for Apocalypse, and next thing you know, Jean Grey is walking out on thin air. And I love that scene so much.
Pulling some psychic shit, walking on air.
Because that whole scene mirrors what's going on in Apocalypse and Charles' head so well. And it's just, I love that whole scene. Alex, what did you think of that when Apocalypse walks out there and he's like, "We're still connected, Charles," and they start having that true telepathic fight?
Apocalypse is standing there fighting Charles in his mind while fighting the others physically.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's not something you see out of your generic everyday villain, and I think they did a very good job of showing you this guy is real. They lose right now, the world is over.
Mm-hmm.
And leading up to that, which I anticipated what happens next. Because there's only one way you're going to defeat Apocalypse. And like you said, Jean Grey starts doing some stuff. Starts walking on air, showing her powers. What happens next, Kyle? What comes to a conclusion at the end? What do we see?
Well, I don't know if a lot of people are going to know this unless you're a comic book fan, but Jean Grey is one of the most formidable villains that the X-Men ever fight. She is the Dark Phoenix, and she is more of a threat. Yeah, more so than Apocalypse. Her powers are virtually limitless. And because of that, she sort of loses control of who she is when she becomes the Dark Phoenix. And just this tiny little glimpse we get when she was walking out on air and held her arms out, the tiny little glimpse we got of the Phoenix shooting forward as he was ripped from flesh and bone is a fraction of the power she really has. And it was terrifying. It was terrifying. It was epic. It was exciting. It was such a great conclusion to the movie. And I love the last line Oscar Isaac gives us as Apocalypse. The very last thing he says as he's getting ripped apart, he says, "All is revealed." And he kind of smiles. And I love it. I love it. He knew in that moment, when he saw her, he realized she is even stronger than I am. I mean, if he is still connected to Charles and he's able to have a psychic fight with him in his mind, I think it's possible that he got a glimpse of Jean Grey for a second there. And he really looked into her head for a second and saw, this is someone who is going to do what I set out to do today on a much grander scale. And so he realizes that all is revealed. He is not the true Apocalypse. The true Apocalypse is Jean Grey.
And that gives us a lot to look forward to in the coming X-Men universe.
And we'll let you guys go here, but right before we do, in case you stayed for the end credits and you were confused, Essex Corporation is a corporation run by someone called Mr. Sinister, and he is a villain that fights with a lot of different people. He actually has some ties to Apocalypse in the comics, and so what they grab the DNA of Weapon X, they get Wolverine's DNA, and the implication of Essex Corporation is basically them sort of giving us an Easter egg that Mr. Sinister might clone Wolverine. And in the comic books, this clone is called X-23. So if you want to do any more research on that, feel free to.
Highly recommend looking into X-23 if you've never heard of it before.
Very cool. But yeah, that'll pretty much do it for us. We've been Gentlemen Critics, and this has been our review of Apocalypse. Hope you guys enjoyed.